sitting alone with your thoughts, that can be a driver of anxiety or sadness or fear or regret, loneliness. Like sitting alone with our thoughts can be hard. So there has to be processes in place here. And that's the other obstacle to overcome, right? If we're going to do this, if we're going to take time to understand our why and learn more about ourselves, we have to have some processes. The question is kind of like, why? Why money? Like, what is your money why? We're trying to discover why we think the way we do, why we spend money the way we do, why we think about spending money, why do we invest money certain ways, why do we, have certain financial goals. And it's just, it's more of the same theme, right? Money therapy is about how money relates to us individually and how to kind of filter out the unnecessary noise and know when and what to pay attention to in our journey towards kind of financial freedom, that path.
And finding your why is a pretty common thing. When you go into the workforce, there's a lot of companies out there. When you first get started, that's like one of the first things they ask you is, find your why and your purpose, for this job, or the position that you're in.
Yeah. It kind of starts with that simplest question, like, tell me about yourself. Tell me who you are. Mm-hmm. And when we ask these questions, like, how many times do people come back and just simply say, like, oh, my name is Brandon and I'm a dad and I have a business. Like, yeah, those are facts about you that I could have pulled off of probably your social media, but I want to know who you are. What makes you tick? Why do you wake up? What makes you get out of bed? What makes you excited? Like Christmas morning, we were kids kind of feeling like, what is it that drives you? And that is a hard process. Like creating self-awareness when you're not good at it, that's a journey and it's difficult. And so that's really kind of what we want to focus on. I sent out an email this week, and one of the kind of points that I made is that, like, why do we avoid, or why do we not know our why? It said that may be because knowing your why or why is scary. And it's scary because, one, we don't know the answer oftentimes. But it's also scary because when we do find out what it is we want, what our why is, we may not be comfortable with the answer, especially not because, like, once we know our why, once we know what it is we're working towards and wanting to, what drives us, what motivates us, the scary part comes in with the conflict of what we're actually doing day to day.
Right.
So I've realized now that my why is this thing, and everything that I'm doing right now is actually in conflict. It actually completely is opposite.
Complete opposite. Yeah.
I drew a kind of correlation in previous session about, like, the person who is driven, their cup is filled when they get to communicate with someone, and they're working 8 hours a day at a data center, putting data points into an Excel sheet,
right,
and not having any conversations. Like, you're going to work, you're making good money, but it's actually draining you and not filling you up, right? So what kind of change might, once you like, man, this is what drives me, this is my burning desire in life.
Yep.
How, like, what changes might come about? What are we staring at when we actually discover this? So it is scary to discover that why, right? Another bullet point in this here is questioning your motivations might also lead you to discover things about yourself that
you may not like.
Yeah, it's simply it's things that you're realizing about yourself, and you could have realized them a long time ago. You just never paused for a second, right? So a lot of this comes in stillness, and that can be scary for a lot of people. Sitting alone with your thoughts, that can be a driver of anxiety or sadness or fear or regret, loneliness. Like sitting alone with our thoughts can be hard. So there has to be processes in place here. And that's the other obstacle to overcome, right? If we're going to do this, if we're going to take time to understand our why and learn more about ourselves, we have to have some processes, right? I'll talk about one, and then we'll like that I really like, and it's not my own. It's pulled from Simon Sinek. And I don't even know if he calls it this, but he should if he doesn't. You can find it in his book, Find Your Why. But I call it just the above the line, below the line exercise. Yep. So you take a blank piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle. And for about 15 minutes, that's all it takes. Just sit there and think about big moments that define who you are, what you've been through in life, all the way back to the earliest memories that you have until now. So if I was to draw this line, I would put, and the big thing here is the more emotionally charged, the more impact these had on lives, the further away from the line you draw,
center line.
Right? And so anything that's positive that you recall goes above the line. Anything negative goes below the line. And obviously, again, the more negative, the further away from the below the line it would be, the more positive and impactful to your life above the line, it would be further away from that middle line paper. So I'll give you a couple examples for me. Starting this business was a very positive and impactful moment. It goes above the line. But my daughter being born goes farther above the line than birthing my business, right? My daughter has more significant impact and more for me than this business, so that she is elevated way above the line. On the flip side, I was in Iraq. I was a medic, lost someone that was close to me while I was being their medic. That was a very negative point in my life, a very, very impactful moment in my life that goes below the line. And even though that's bad, I would also put my grandmother passing away below the line, and probably lower than that. Like that's probably the saddest thing that I've had to endure in my life, the most tragic to me. So why are we doing this? Well, what we're going to end up being able to do is, once this sheet is filled out with good things and bad things, I can just hand it to people, and I can do this exercise with multiple people at multiple times. And I can hand this paper to you, Josh, and say, and you could circle kind of two stories at the top, like furthest above the line. So you might circle, my daughter's birth, and you might circle, me launching this business because they're furthest above the line. And then you might circle below the line stories like my grandmother passing away. Yep. And you're just going to start to ask me questions. You're going to have me tell you this story about my daughter being born. You're going to have me tell the story about launching a business. You're going to have me tell the story about my grandmother passing away. And you're going to ask questions, and you're going to try to pick up on themes, right? So as you start to pick up on themes, one thing, like even though my daughter being born and my grandmother passing away are kind of exact opposites as far as like what you're going to be able to
tells
do.
Me family's important.
Right. Because both the most emotionally charged points of my life were both about family.
Right.
Right. And so we can look for themes in these stories and help develop this sense of why, this sense of purpose that, why is
this basically helps, like it helps build a really nice foundation in the beginning process of finding your why.
100%. And the storytelling process and this discovery and you asking questions about these stories. Now, this could take a couple hours, right? And in Simon Sinek's book, he also talks about to do this with like friends, not your spouse, because your spouse might make assumptions. Like you need to have these conversations with people that don't really know your stories yet. So someone you trust, but not necessarily your parents or your spouse, because they are going to assume certain parts of the story. So they won't be as attentive,
intuitive.
Almost. Yeah. Like they won't pick up on as much because they're going to make assumptions. So anyway,
does
that's
this-
one practice.
So yeah, so the above the line, below the line, does this fall under the, our first step is the reflect and journal?
Yeah. So when we're talking about the practices, that would absolutely be one of the ways. So it's a little bit beyond just when we say reflect and journal, we're not necessarily talking about, hey, just grab a, notepad and write down your thoughts at the end of the day and fold it and never go back and read it. So this is a little bit more of a elevated process that can help you go deeper, and you're going to have to trust someone to hear your story. That person is going to have to be able to listen and draw some conclusions. And you might even be able to pick up on some things as you start to see these, but nonetheless, when you have these conversations, you're going to start to learn, like, man, family, I've always said family is important, but I did not realize like it was the most important thing on like a different level. It's 10 times as more important, right? And
you might not realize that, but as you're articulating this through these processes,
we have another kind of example, or another practice, another process that you can use. This one's older. I've seen it and read about it before. But it's called the 7 whys to get to your truth. So basically all you're going to do is you're going to ask somebody a question. You're going to, like I'd ask you, Josh, what do you do? And you're going to say, well, I do this. And then I'm going to ask 7 why questions. And
are the questions already in? Is that a part of it?
No. So you can come up with your own, but I have an example. So I would ask, what do you do? And the person responds, I want to be a writer. And when they respond, I want to be a writer, my next question is, well, why do you want to be a writer? Well, I want to share my thoughts. I want to share my story. Okay. Why do you want to share your story? Well, I want to help someone. If they know what I've been through and they can relate it to their life, it's super impactful. Okay. Well, why do you want to help someone? Well, people oftentimes get isolated and they feel alone. And I feel if I can have impact and help them in this way, it'll better their life. Yeah, they'd feel less alone, right? They could have more impact and more effect and better outcomes. Well, why do you want them to have better outcomes? Well, so they can live better lives. And why do you want them to live better lives? Because we only have one life and we should all live it to the fullest, right?
And that's what fills my cup.
And the last why is, why should you live life to the fullest and enjoy your journey? And the response was, because when you're on your deathbed and someone asks you if you've regretted anything, you wouldn't want to answer, I wish I had done X, this certain activity or lived this certain way. And so the takeaway there is this conversation was like, I want to be a writer. Well, really what they want to do is they want to prevent themselves and other people from getting to the end of life and not being proud of what they've accomplished, and instead being regretful from what they didn't do. So if that's the case, maybe this person was like, I want to be a writer. I'm really motivated to be a writer. And they were going to apply for just about any job that had to do with writing. Yep. But now we discovered this, and it's more about leading someone along a path in life that helps them get to the end and not be regretful. Now all of a sudden, we're not just wanting to be a writer. We're wanting to be a specific type of storyteller, and we need a specific mode for that. And now think about all the just focus this writer will have and what they need, the content, the stories that they need to tell. Right. So that's the 7 whys to get to your truth. Another thing of reflect and journal. Do this in quiet. You need quiet time. And again, that's scary. So also have an exit, tell yourself you're going to do this for 1 hour a week or whatever.
And if 10 minutes, for 10 minutes.
Yeah. If it starts to get too heavy, it's okay. This is a process, and you can step away and be like, I need to chew on that for a little longer before I push through it. So I'm just going to step away right now, and I'm going to take some time just to reflect on this one thing. Be really honest.
Probably the hardest part that's in this list of what we have right here is being honest with yourself.
But how much more effective do you think we would be as a society, as an individual, whatever, if we were just so driven,
Oh yeah.
you know, like you couldn't shake people quite as easy, right?
Right.
Vision boards. Have you ever created a vision board?
I've never done that.
So I've seen this, and I have a couple clients that like swear by vision boards. You see, but then what's really cool now are there are actually apps.
There's programs that do it.
Yeah, you can put an app on your phone, and you can make a vision board on your phone, and it will create a wallpaper for your phone. So like every time you're picking your phone up, you're seeing these things that you want. And sometimes like one of our clients, he has like kind of vague pictures. And he actually, he has a purpose, a reason behind like the vague pictures. Like he has a picture of like a skyline, kind of like the picture almost looks like a field, like a farm field. But what it actually is kind of a blurry picture of a golf course. And his whole thing, like one thing is he wants to spend more time this year golfing, but the vagueness of his pictures, he has them on his phone all the time. He was like, I make them vague because people will say, hey, what's that? And I get an opportunity to explain it. And every time I explain it, it helps me remember this is important to me right now.
Yep.
So I thought that was like a really cool, that was not mine. Just really cool tidbit there. We have to know that when we're thinking about who we are, we mentioned this earlier, the outcome of discovering our passions, our whys, like it can create conflict with how we're currently living life. So this last part we'll wrap up with is conflict between what you do and what you want to do can create stress. It can be frustrating. So we have a couple tidbits on how. One, I think it's important as we journey through this process is to remember your values and help this values process and this why process create some goals there. And I think that is like the biggest piece. The other pieces of really understanding this is you have to give yourself permission to go through this journey and not be so bound by time constraints. So like once you realize, hey, I'm in this job that is actually in conflict with me being filled as a human being, you can't necessarily just change it tomorrow.
You can't just jump out.
You can't just quit your job. I mean, maybe you can, maybe you're in this spot, but for the most part, you're probably in a place where you're going to have to start somewhere else and then slowly evolve. But again, once I realize if I'm in a job and I realize I need to be in a job where I can communicate because that's what fills my cup, I can also start after hours, like realizing getting better at things, practicing, studying, researching things on where to go. And now when I go to those job interviews,
you're ready.
Like, you're just like, man, like I have to have this job because this is who I am. It's not, it won't be a job. You're like, imagine going into someone that for an interview and saying, hey, this isn't just a job. It's an opportunity for me to be who I am.
Yep.
So that's huge.
That's powerful.
It's huge. What else? What you got?
I completely lost train of thought of what I was going to say. I was thinking about, like, you said you can't just quit your job right then and there, but once you find your why and your purpose, that job that you're currently in has a purpose. Mm-hmm. It's there to pay the bills so you can do your side hustle in the evenings to put you in a situation to when you do have that job opportunity, you're ready for it. So that can motivate you to still get up and go to work, even though it might be in that cubicle. You have your why and all right, there's a reason why I'm at this job right now, and that's okay. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Exactly. I think, that's spot on. And even again, you don't have to focus on the one, like if conflict does arise, like I'm in this job and it's not letting me do X, Y, and Z. Well, let's make sure we work on how we narrate things in our own minds,
because it's not like you don't work every hour of every day. So there's after hours, there's before work, like there's things. So what are you doing with the rest of your time? Sometimes I talk to people like, I'm stuck in this job. It's not good for me. It's provides income and that's about it. Everything else, it's super stressful. What'd you do this past weekend? Well, I sat home and watched Netflix.
Yep.
How did that help you? Like, let's first change what you can change, control what you can control, and let the rest follow. Sometimes we get so focused on the thing that we can't change, we forget about how much control we have on everything else. So I would say that as the conflict arises or as the stress comes out of realizing I'm doing this and I should be doing this, I'm doing this and my heart tells me I should be doing this. As that conflict, okay, I can't change this today. This is going to be a process. But what I can do is do this, this, and this, right? That's my thoughts. What do you got?
Oh, do we talk about this? So the last little step is keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, I mean that's the big, a lot of times. I mean there's gold in that all over. One thing I read something recently. I'm reading a book, and he alluded to the fact that if you're being told something, if it's true, it should be true in other places in life. This is kind of off topic, but I found that so meaningful. He gives an example, if we tell you, hey, putting money away for down the road, saving up for big goals later in life, if that's an actually true good thing that you should do, you should be able to apply that same kind of law in somewhere else in life. So he was like, think about it. We were raised, right? We would 4 or 5 p.m. we go home from school, and what we do? We want a snack, right? And Mom, can I have a snack? And Mom would be like, no, if you have a snack now, you're going to ruin your dinner, right? So the whole notion of just denying a little bit of that instant gratification to enjoy the goodness of something grand later. No, don't eat the Twinkie now, because then you won't have the steak and all the things, all these wonderful things. This, so the truth applies in multiple places in life. I think that right there, us telling people keep it simple. Yep. That apply. Right. If you don't start at the simplest function.
One thing I heard a dad say, this is like a rule in his house. He makes his kids read 20 pages a day. And after they read the 20 pages, they get 1 hour they can play video games or whatever. And it's the same thing. You save up money for the future. And if you read 20 pages a day, next thing you know, you've read, a couple books a month. Yeah. And that's a step ahead of a lot of people out there. But it applies across so many different things.
So we'd love to make sure that you guys keep us accountable to that. If we're ever saying something and it seems to not fit other narratives, challenge us, because we can talk about it. And that's what this is for. It's educational, but we want it to be real and relatable. So keep it simple. This whole process, it is deep. It's heavy sometimes. It's hard. It's mainly hard because we have to take the time and we have to be brave enough to kind of be really honest with ourselves about who we are. But that's part of it. And once you do that, once you get to the other side, now you know where to spend your time, where to spend your money. Yep. And once you start spending your time and your money where in the spaces that align with who you are, your values, your motivations, the things you care about most in life, that level of fulfillment is something that you just can't get by accident.
Right.
And so the journey is the hard part of the journey. The journey itself, the difficulty is worth it, because on the other side, there's kind of this awareness, this fulfillment.
Happiness will follow.
Happiness, joy, and goodness. And what's really, really cool is that level of satisfaction. You oftentimes stop chasing the frivolous stuff, and you start focusing in. It's incredible I've been through that journey, and now I know, like, I don't waste money like I used to trying to just grab at anything to give me some sort of happiness. I know what makes me happy, and that's where my money goes. And so get on that journey, spend the time. It's hard.
Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
But the solution is simple. Cool. See y'all next week.
We hope you learned from our conversation today. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes and not intended to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions of how it might be applicable to your specific situation, please reach out to your financial professional. Of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you regarding specific questions or applications to your individual financial situation. With that, here are a few disclosures. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. With that, thank you, and we look forward to having you back. Take care.